Today the universe has something important to tell you. It is not by chance that you are here at this moment. There is a subtle synchronicity, guiding your questions, your silence, and even your most confusing feelings. The universe is attentive to your journey and wants to deliver to you a truth that you may have already felt, but were unable to put into words. Open your heart, because what is about to be revealed may change the way you see this connection. You have had moments where you have wondered why this person came into your life. Ever since your paths crossed, there was something different in the air, a kind of silent upheaval that began to unfold within you, even before any words were spoken. What you may not know is that this movement didn't just happen on your side. The universe watched everything and observed how much your presence affected those you constantly think about. This person came from a life that seemed to be under control, had plans, fixed ideas, and perhaps even a trajectory built with dedication. But when you appeared, something changed inside, not immediately or rationally, but like an internal earthquake that cannot be perceived from the outside. His energy was like a call that interrupted the usual logic and put everything on hold. She didn't expect it, and maybe she didn't even want to feel what she felt, but she did. Deep down, this person always had a feeling that life could offer more. Even in moments when everything seemed perfect, career, commitments, or even another relationship, there was a subtle emptiness, a kind of longing for what had not yet happened. When you met, this emptiness was clearly exposed. You represented what was missing, even without promising anything. But not every heart is ready for the truth. And the truth of that connection required courage. It wasn't just about feeling something different, but about recognizing that this feeling brought with it an emotional responsibility that didn't fit within the old molds. Being with you would require giving up masks, comfort zones, external expectations. And as much as this had been silently desired, in practice it was frightening. The universe saw when this person tried to resist, tried to convince themselves that it was just a phase, a fantasy, or that there was no point in moving forward. There were times when he retreated, hid, or created barriers to try to contain what was growing inside. But none of these attempts erased the intensity of the connection, because what is true does not disappear, it only transforms. This transformation, however, was not light. It had the weight of someone who needs to abandon an entire life to walk towards the unknown. Even without knowing exactly what would come next, this person was gradually pushed to face the fact that it was no longer possible to pretend that nothing had happened. The connection between you required a new way of living, more honest, more whole, more real. And although it may seem like she walked away or ran away, in reality the opposite happened. She was forced to dive into herself, and the reflection she saw there was you. This reflection caused fear, admiration, confusion, and, above all, a feeling of reunion, as if something very old had come back to the surface. From that point on, everything started to get mixed up internally. Certainties became questions, plans became doubts, and life began to seem like a tight garment that no longer fit. You became the turning point in her life, even if nothing was said openly. And now, every thought this person tries to push away only confirms that there is something about you that they cannot ignore or explain. There are times in life when everything seems to fall into place as planned. Defined paths, goals achieved, an apparently coherent existence. But the universe has its own plans, and sometimes the unexpected turns out to be the only thing that really made sense in the first place. That's exactly what happened to this person when you came into their path. She wasn't looking for a new connection. She wasn't looking for something that escaped logic, and much less did she expect someone like you to cross her path with such force. But real life doesn't always respect mental plans. And the presence of someone who touches the soul does not follow social rules or external expectations. At first, everything was confusing. The attraction he felt was not just physical or emotional. It was as if her presence activated something forgotten, a dormant memory, an old desire, perhaps even something she herself couldn't name. You were no longer a person in your life. You were the catalyst for an awakening. This intensity, however, was frightening, because it was not a common passion, nor a passing enchantment. It was the kind of connection that makes you wonder what you were doing with your life up until that point. The presence of the two of you in the same space created a different vibration, as if the air changed. And that became impossible to ignore. But at the same time that this connection was desired, it also seemed dangerous. She was afraid of losing herself in something she couldn't control. He feared that if he followed this impulse, everything would fall apart around him. There was a lot at stake: structures, reputations, commitments. So, like so many other people, she tried to resist, tried to carry on as if nothing was happening. This attempt at denial, however, only increased the strength of the connection. The universe, in turn, never stopped sending signals: the encounters, the coincidences, the dreams, the insistent memories. Everything seemed to indicate that there was something bigger going on. And even though she tried to ignore it, she knew. She knew you had touched parts of her that no one had reached before. She found herself torn between two realities: the one she knew that gave her a false sense of security, and the one you represented, unstable, unknown, but deeply true. The first was comfortable, the second inevitable. The most curious thing is that for a long time she believed that she was looking for a light, stable and predictable love. But deep down what her heart wanted was exactly what you were experiencing together: intensity, depth, soul connection. You forced her to look at that unspoken desire, to realize that settling for good enough was no longer viable, that her heart had already made a choice, even if her mind still resisted. And the more she tried to move on, the more you appeared in her thoughts, not as an ordinary memory, but as a living presence that silently crossed her days. There was a longing for what was still alive, an absence that never ceased, a magnetism that pulled her back. This person gradually realized that he was in new territory, a place where words were not enough and where control was slipping through his fingers. She was feeling something that could not be explained, only recognized. And no matter how much you tried to find logical answers, what remained was the certainty that you two crossed paths for a reason that goes far beyond rational understanding. The truth is that she never forgot you, nor did she really try. She just walked away to understand, to try to protect herself. But what is real, what is vibrationally authentic, returns. And that's why you remain so present in her inner universe. Somewhere along the way, distance set in. It wasn't a sudden departure, perhaps it wasn't even planned, but it was felt. And the silence between you began to speak for itself. A silence that, far from being empty, was filled with unspoken thoughts, pent-up feelings, and unanswered questions. The universe followed every second of this separation, every doubt you carried, every attempt to understand why suddenly everything seemed to disconnect. And while you were trying to interpret this silence, on the other side, this person was experiencing a real emotional turmoil. She didn't forget you, nor did she replace you, much less did she move on as if nothing had happened. The truth is that she was taken by an intense internal process and, as contradictory as it may seem, she needed this space to process everything that you awakened in each other. Revisiting the first moments of connection has become a silent habit. She found herself remembering looks, conversations, small gestures that might have seemed banal, but which now revealed themselves to be loaded with meaning. It was as if each memory was a piece of the puzzle she was trying to put together to understand why you affected her so much. She realized that nothing she had experienced before compared. Previous connections felt superficial, compared to the depth of what he felt with you. It was not a question of time or external intensity, but of internal impact. You stirred layers that were buried, and this brought to the surface a part of her that had become accustomed to being dormant. But along with these memories came difficult feelings: the guilt for not having been able to sustain the bond, the frustration for having hidden behind old fears, the shame of perhaps having pushed you away without explaining why. And more than that, the fear of having lost something that only happens once in a lifetime. And while you wondered if there was still anything there, she wondered if she had messed it up. The universe, however, has its own time. And even if our paths diverge for a period, nothing that is true is erased. No matter how much this person tried to rationalize, every time you went back into your mind, something would spark again. It wasn't just longing, it was a living presence inside her. She began to understand that this feeling was not a choice, but rather a kind of calling. It wasn't about wanting or not wanting, it was about recognizing that you were connected by something that transcended the ordinary. And this recognition gradually broke down the defenses. Even without looking for you, even in silence, she felt you. She felt it when you thought about her, she felt it when something in you connected with something in her. And this bond, invisible to the eyes, gained more and more strength. It didn't matter even the absence of words, the bond continued to pulse deep within the soul. That's why today she still carries images of you as if they were recent, because somehow you never stopped meeting each other on more subtle planes. Her heart, even in the midst of confusion, still responds to your presence. It still vibrates when it remembers what they experienced. It still wants to understand what could be if there was enough courage on both sides. And maybe she still doesn't know how to get closer again. Maybe she doesn't have the right words, but she feels it intensely. And this feeling, despite time and distance, has not faded. When she retreats into silence and allows her feelings to reveal themselves without filters, a truth returns with full force. She still desires you, not with the same naivety as before, nor with idealizations, but with a new clarity, born of absence, reflection, and the depth with which this connection touched her. She realizes that even though she tries to go on with her life as if nothing had happened, something in her heart remains anchored to you. It's not a prison, it's more like an emotional frequency that she's been tuned into and can't switch off from. Your memory, your gaze, your energy, all of this remains as present as in the beginning, and sometimes even more so. This perception does not come as an explosion, it comes as a gentle wave that from time to time invades her in the most unexpected moments, in a song, in a stray phrase, in a smell, in a dream. You show up there without asking permission. And she, instead of fighting it, began to accept it. She understands now that it wasn't just about you, it was about who she became when she was with you. It was about the freedom she felt, the authenticity, the space to be whole, something she had never experienced before, even though she had been with other people. You didn't just love her, you revealed her to herself. So, as much as she tried to rationalize the separation, she knows that this is not just any connection. And the universe confirms this with each memory that resurfaces, with each emotion that insists on returning. Every time she tries to move forward, something makes her return to her starting point, you. The most surprising thing is that when she revisits these feelings, she realizes that the love she feels has not diminished. It has changed shape, matured, lost its excesses, and gained deeper roots. It is no longer driven by urgency, but by a constant presence. He no longer begs, but remains. She begins to understand that this connection was never meant to be controlled. It is not a relationship that can be defined with labels. It is a bond that transcends time, words, and even logic. And even though the outside world seems to be going on normally, inside there is a space reserved exclusively for you. In this space live the moments that marked the beginning of everything, the day she met you, the exchange of glances that seemed to carry an entire universe, the conversations that went beyond the surface, the feeling of belonging that she never knew how to explain, but always recognized. And now all this comes back as if time had not passed, but it did. And during this time she also changed, grew, reflected, faced her own ghosts, understood that to live something true she needs to be ready to give herself over with courage. And this courage is being born now, silent but firm, like a seed that germinates in the dark before finding the light. She doesn't know what's going to happen between you. There are no promises or guarantees. But she knows that the feeling is still alive, that the flame is still burning, that there is something between you that deserves to be looked at with maturity and respect, because even in silence, even far away, this connection continued to grow and she can no longer pretend that she doesn't feel it, because she feels it deeply. And for the first time, maybe you're willing to acknowledge that, not just for yourself, but for you too. She spends her days wondering what would have happened if she had stayed, if she had been honest with herself from the beginning, if she had had the courage to follow the feeling without trying to control it, without running away. These questions do not come with the weight of regret, but with a lucidity that only time can bring. Because now she understands that the love she feels for you was not born out of need, nor fantasy. It was born out of truth, out of what is rare and precious. And as much as she tried to convince herself that it was better to bury this feeling, the reality is that it continued to grow inside her, even without a stage, even without contact. The universe, with its silent wisdom, did not allow her to forget you. With each step you took in an attempt to move forward, you reappeared in another form, in dreams, in synchronicities, in intuitions, as if the universe were saying, "It's not over yet," as if something bigger was asking us not to give up. Today she recognizes that there is nothing left to hide from herself, that you left an irreversible mark on her life, that connection was not a mistake, nor a distraction, it was a turning point, a portal that led her within herself. You weren't just someone she loved, you were the one who helped her remember who she really is. And even though she doesn't know if there will be a reunion, there is something she wants you to know. Even if she never says it out loud, she feels it, she still feels it, and she feels it with maturity, with respect, with depth. He no longer wants to run away or erase himself. Just want to acknowledge. Maybe time has driven them apart. Perhaps they followed paths that never crossed again. But inside it there is a space where the two of you are still side by side. A place where eyes meet without noise, where affection pulses without haste, where connection still vibrates. She no longer expects everything to go back to the way it was, nor does she need proof. What you feel is enough. And that is precisely why if one day you look into each other's eyes again, she will not hesitate, she will not hide, she will allow what has always been true to have space to exist. Because in the end, no matter how much time has passed, what is real remains, and the love that is born from the soul is never lost. If you felt that this message spoke directly to your heart, know this. The universe is reminding you that not everything needs to be understood right now. Some connections exist to transform us first and only then reveal themselves completely. Trust in time, trust in your intuition, and, above all, trust in the feeling that persists even when everything seems to be over. If this story inspired you, write in the comments. A heart that recognizes its own reflection in infinity. Share this video with someone who also needs to hear this message. And if you feel that the universe speaks to you here, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to receive each new sign. We are on this journey together.